Good evening. Mark your hymn books, number 707. 707 will be the song of encouragement this evening after the lesson, 707. "707 for the invitation. What's my second song? 364. I had it marked and I pulled it out. No, I didn't. I got it. After you mark that, turn to 72. It'll be our first song. Following the singing of this hymn, Brother Steve Weber will direct our minds in our opening prayer. 72. Come, let us all unite to sing, God is love. Let heaven and earth their praises sing, God is love. Let every soul from sin awake, each in his heart sweet music make, and sing with us for Jesus' sake, for God is love. God is love. God is love. Come, let us all unite to sing, for God is love. O thou to earth's remotest bound, God is love. In Christ we have redemption found, God is love. His blood has washed our sins away, His Spirit turned our night to day, and now we can rejoice to say that God is love. God is love. God is love. Come, let us all unite to sing that God is love. Come, happy is our portion here, God is love. His promises our spirits cheer, God is love. He is our sun and shield by day, our help, our hope, our strength and stay. He will be with us all the way. Our God is love. God is love. God is love. Come, let us all unite to sing that God is love. Lord, we ask you, college students, grade
school students that are out in the summer. May they have a safe summer, be the educators. Lord, we ask that you heal the suffering throughout the world. Father God, may these conflicts come to an end. Strengthen our country, strengthen our military. Be as our men and women in uniform, first responders who come to our aid and call upon. Lord, we thank you for the many blessings you give us. As always, watch over our children and our grandchildren. Keep them safe and in good health. And forgive us of our many sins. In Jesus' name,
Amen. Song before the lesson will be 364. 364. Nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee, and though it be a cross that raiseth me, still my song shall be nearer, my God, to thee, nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee. Though like a wanderer the sun goes down, darkness be over me, my rest a stone. Yet in my dreams I'd be nearer, my God, to thee, nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee. There let the way appear, steps unto heaven. All that thou sendest me in mercy give. Angels to beckon me nearer, my God, to thee, nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee. Or if on joyful wing, cleaving the sky, sun, moon, and stars forgot, upward I fly. Still my song shall be nearer, my God, to thee, nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee.
I marked my place and I must have took it out. Sorry, folks. Let's make sure I don't touch anything. Have you ever heard anybody talk about a nation under the judgment of God? Never heard that? There's been quite a few of them. Joel, I'm glad you're here tonight. This morning, Scott looked at me with fire in his eyes and said, "You better sing bass. You're it, buddy." Where did he head off to? Is he God? He's had it. That last song he sung this morning, I don't know if I've ever sang that in my life, but maybe we have. But I finally got it, the second verse. After the first verse, there was no bass whatsoever. So, but that was a hard song to sing. But really good song, man. I'll tell you what, some of these songs we sing are very good. A nation under the judgment of God. Our nation has felt that way before, and our dignitaries have expressed it. If you read the writings of Abraham Lincoln believed with all his heart that America was under the judgment of God and was paying for past sins. The only president that I know of that spent most of his speeches repenting as a nation. Do you imagine if someone stood up today and repented as a nation? I've never heard it in my entire life. But I'll tell you what, when you read the Bible and what a nation looks like when it's under God's judgment, it's like reading the newspaper right now. You know, we live in a scary time. The world seems to be on fire. And it seems like every week it's something new. Last week, the cities all over this country were literally on fire. And then we find that we're dealing with foreign lands that truly we've had to deal with for years. And you see these problems, when they're not dealt with, they constantly are a thorn in your flesh. And this is what we're dealing with now. Someone asked me, what do you think about what's going on? I don't know what to think about what's going on. And I'm not making too many judgments because I don't know that our president has much of a choice when it comes to it. I just pray for him, and I pray for this nation, and I pray for the people of Iran. For that matter, Israel and all that are involved. We live in a scary time, and it's because people aren't looking to God anymore. They're not putting their faith in him. It's curious. I heard the end of Trump's little 3-minute speech last night, and he said he wanted to thank God, and he said, "God, we love you." And I thought that was very impressive. I just hope our nation starts acting like it. There you are. Okay, that's good. Let's read Jeremiah here. I've got just kind of a comparison this evening, and I want to look at it. If you were to turn to Jeremiah chapter 6, I want to tell you a little bit about what's going on here. Of course, their enemies are going to be sin against Judah, and God is going to be the one directing the siege. And so the idea is, in verse 4 of chapter 6, he says, "Prepare ye war against her, and rise." Those are chilling thoughts when we think of the situation we're in right now. Prepare ye war. A nation always has to be prepared for their enemies. And here then, God is speaking of this. But God says in verse 6 that he's going to visit the people of Israel. Notice verse 6. "For thus hath the Lord of hosts said, hewn ye down trees and cast a mount against Jerusalem." What does that mean right there? He's saying, get out and make ramparts and pile rocks and dirt in front of your cities. Get ready for a siege. You know, some of these sieges lasted for over a year. I think of the siege in 73 AD against the Masada. It lasted over a year. And the people in the Masada fortress watched as Rome built literally a mountain of dirt and rocks to get up to them. And so he says here, start cutting down trees now because it's coming. If you ever get a chance, read the story of the siege of Lachish in Israel. It's fascinating, all of the preparation that went in to these places. And, war has changed quite a bit in the recent wars, and go all the way back to the Civil War. There weren't sieges in this style, but there certainly still were. If you think of the end of the Civil War, you're going to have to go to Richmond or places like this, and they were sieged for months and months upon a time. Those folks literally dug holes in the ground and lived in holes because they were being bombarded with cannon every day. And so God is saying, get ready. How would you get ready today, church, if war was imminent and it was on our soil? Preparation's hard, isn't it? And I'm convinced that if America's electrical system went down just a week, millions would probably die. Our people are so used to such things. And I'm including myself. I remember not having air conditioning. I remember having to use an outhouse. That's how backward we were in Bellsville. But I want to tell you something. Even though I did them, that's been 40 years ago, and I would not want to tiptoe through the snow to go to the bathroom again in the middle of the night with a lantern. That is for sure. But I think I could at least survive to some extent. But when you can't buy things, notice during the coronavirus, do you remember going to the store and seeing the counters empty? It never even occurred to me to buy toilet paper. Laura said, hey, we're about out. I thought, well, okay, I'll just get in the car and go down there because it's so convenient, and I get the Food Lion, and guess what I find? Empty shelves. I told her, Laura, you better collect a bunch of leaves out in the backyard, right? That's how primitive man did it. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine our young people just not having their phones to tell them what to do? And that's where we're at. I'm not a prepper, but I've been trying to get to a lifestyle that's a little more closer to the earth. I plan on doing a lot of canning. Donna's been helping me. I've got over 100 jars, and I'll tell you what I want to make is that tomato juice you all make. I could just live on that. But, most young people wouldn't even know how to do that. I'm blessed that I grew up doing that. Here he says, get ready, war is coming, cut down your trees, dig in, folks. And so there's the warning. Now, if you turn in my Bible, I have to turn the page, but there are a couple of things that lead up to our passage in Jeremiah 6:16. First of all, verse 10 says, to whom shall I speak and give warning that they may hear? Behold, their ear is uncircumcised, and they cannot hearken. Who's going to listen? Later, Jeremiah would be brought before the king on a number of accounts, actually. And what was his message? What if God raised up a prophet today with the same message as Jeremiah? This is what his message was. O king, surrender. I think I've asked you all that question before when we've examined the prophets. What if I said to you today that Iran was going to be attacking, and God says, I want you patriotic Americans, to just surrender? How many would stand up and say, all right, let's do it? You would think there's no way these folks can beat the Americans. We're tough, right? We got this. And Jeremiah kept saying surrender. And he kept giving King Zedekiah chance after chance. And finally, he gave him a dire warning that the last thing that he would see is his two sons. And that came true. And do you remember how it was fulfilled? Nebuchadnezzar's men hunted down Zedekiah. He killed his two sons in front of him, and then they plucked out his eyes and drug him to Babylon, because he couldn't see. Here Jeremiah says they couldn't hear either. They didn't want to hear what was going to happen. They had ears that were uncircumcised. You remember over in Acts chapter 7, we mentioned Stephen this morning. Here then is Stephen's warning in Acts chapter 7:51. Ye stiff-necked and uncircumcised in heart and ears. You do always resist the Holy Ghost as your fathers did, so do you. Stiff-necked people. What does that mean? Isaiah said the Israelites had sinews of iron. What did he mean? He mean they were stubborn, brother. That's right. They wouldn't turn their head one way or the other. They were going down the road like my wife does when she's driving. If you ever meet her, she's got both hands on the wheel, and she's not looking anywhere but right in front of her. All right? Yeah, stiff-necked. I'm not calling Laura stiff-necked, but what I mean is stubborn. Wouldn't look to the left or the right. We're going to do what they were going to do, and nobody was going to tell them any different. He says their ears were uncircumcised. Stephen says their hearts were uncircumcised and their ears. They wouldn't listen, and they didn't have a heart to, even if they wanted. Jeremiah will say later, he will say the heart is desperately wicked above how many things? All things. When you look around the society today, what do you see? People who are driven by their own heart. Everything's about feelings. One news commentator quips many times, I've heard him say, facts don't care about your feelings. Well, you see, we have trouble understanding that. We have trouble realizing that. And so here is our little town, who a week ago was putting together their own little riot, which I just have to sort of laugh at. And then this past weekend, I understand they had a pride parade. And this is our own little town here. You know, I tell people back home, they ask me about Berkeley Springs because they hear about it sometimes. You know, Berkeley Springs is a number of times one of the nicest communities in all of America. And folks will ask me about it, and I say, well, downtown, you have downtown Washington, D.C., and 500 yards in any direction, you have Alabama. And that's the best way I can explain it. And most folks I know who live outside of downtown never hardly go downtown. Well, why? Because they shove this stuff down our throats. And that's the way it is in the world. And so then Jeremiah says, their ear is uncircumcised, they cannot hearken. Behold, the word of the Lord is unto them a reproach. They have no delight in it. And so number one, they did not delight in the word of the Lord. If you go down here, I want you to notice, they did not delight in the truth, but were covetous. Look at verse 13. For from the least of them, even unto the greatest of them, everyone is given to covetousness. And from the prophet, even unto the priest, everyone deals falsely. They were liars, and they couldn't even show shame. He said in verse 14, they have healed also the hurt of the daughter of my people, slightly saying, peace, peace, and there be no peace. How many times do we turn on the news and everyone says, well, everything's just fine? Right? But look at this. These people had no shame. Notice verse 15. Were they ashamed when they have committed abomination? Nay, they were not at all ashamed. Now look at this verse. Neither could they blush. You know, people aren't ashamed at all of things they used to be highly ashamed of. I'll be done in a minute, Tommy, I promise you. Which brings me to my verse. Thus saith the Lord, stand ye in the ways. Does anybody have the word crossroads in their Bible? When I was studying this, there was a translation, I can't remember which one, but stand at the crossroads and see and ask for the old paths. Where is the good way? And walk therein, and ye shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk therein. And so, thus saith the Lord. You see that? To the wanderer, he says, stand in the ways, or stand at the crossroads. I think that's where we're at in this nation. We're at a crossroads. Which way are we going to go? One leads to heaven, the other leads down below. That's an old spiritual, a line from an old spiritual. But it's good advice. Are people choosing the way of God? In some respects, I see people turning to God more now. Or at least they seem to feign an interest. You know that once again, Bible sales are up. For a long time, they were going down and down and down. And do you know who's buying them? Young people. And what's curious is these young people have never owned a Bible. When I was a kid, every young person had a Bible. As a matter of fact, they were given one if they wanted it every year in our schools. It's a little Bible. Generally, I think it was probably the Gideon's Bible or something like that. But it was a New Testament and the book of Psalms. And I go back through my stuff from the old home place, and I find those Bibles that were given to me a number of times. Used to go to a hotel, and guess what you'd find? You'd find a Bible waiting for you. And we could say, well, I remember preachers saying, there's a Bible in every home. And they were opining the fact that people didn't read it. But at least they were in the homes. Folks, right now, there are Bibles in the home. I remember my first Bible. The Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on my mother's door, on our door one day, and gave us a yellow Bible. It was a kid's Bible. It came narrated with pictures, and I'll never forget it. And that's what I had. And going back, that thing theologically probably wasn't worth much. The fact of the matter is, I had it, and my mother sat down with me, and we went through those biblical stories. Even though we didn't go to church, I knew the Bible because my mother went through it with me and prayed with me. By the way, in that little school in Bellsville, every morning we said the Pledge of Allegiance, and someone in the class led a prayer. Before lunch, someone led a prayer, and before we let out, someone led a prayer. That was 3 prayers a day. We didn't hear anything about separation of church and state back then. I guess we were a little school and get away with it. And I thank God every day for my grade school education. When the Challenger blew up, you remember that? They dismissed school to some extent. You had to go. But when we got in there, I don't remember if it was a Monday or what, we met in the multi-purpose room, and there were preachers from all over the community. And we just sat in there, and we sang hymns, and the preachers encouraged us, and they let us out. And I'll tell you what, it was so healing to be part of that. Can you imagine that today? I don't even know if the preachers had to have a permit to come in. Well, here we are. Stand in the ways. You're at the crossroads. Now, if you go over to Matthew 11:28, we have this beautiful passage where Jesus says, "Come unto me." You all know the passage, Matthew 11:28. "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." When we come to a crossroads, we need to remember Jesus' invitation. He is saying, "Come to me." One of the poems I learned in school very early was a poem by Robert Frost. You all remember it. He came to what? A fork in the road. See, he had a choice, and he took the road less traveled. All right? Jesus said there's a pathway, a broad way, but it leads to destruction. But he talked about a gate. Straight is the gate and narrow is the way. This is that road less traveled. In our passage, he says, see and consider. Wake up, look around. The signs are all around us. Jesus says, accept my rest. Now, you notice Jesus is going to mention the way to find rest in him is to put his yoke upon you. Now, I've never had to deal with an animal that I needed to put some sort of yoke on. I've never stood behind a plow, but all of my people before me did. And so what is he saying? There's plenty of work in the kingdom, but you're going to find rest, true rest. If we go back to Jeremiah, he says, ask for the old paths. Now, here's something that people don't want to do. They don't want to hear about religion. Why? Because that's old-fashioned. I go to Amish country, and the words that I hear that describe such places is, these people are quaint. What does quaint mean? What are they saying? Yeah, well, they're old-fashioned and they're quaint and it's cute and it's nice to see them. And by the way, I'm not saying that that's what we need to do. I asked an Amish man one time, I said, why 1843? He said, what are you talking about? I was like, why'd you all pick that year to mimic? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, you're wanting to be old-fashioned. How come you settled on about that time? Why didn't you go back to the Roman days? Why are you all wearing togas? And I mean, it looked like he had never thought of it in his entire life. And I told him, I said, well, I know why you pick 1843, because your bishop tells you to. I said, I want to see you go back farther. I don't want to see you riding that horse. I want to see you go back to the old donkey. Why aren't you riding that? How come you don't live in a tent? What's going on, man? 1843, we talked about foolish inconsistencies, right? And so I see a lot of inconsistencies in them, and to me that is quaint. I like to hear the Amish buggies. Tommy told me what an Amish drive-by shooting sounded like today. You'll have to have him do it for you. But we think of them as old-fashioned. Brethren, what we do here with our religion is more old-fashioned than any other religion that I know of, because we follow the most primitive pattern that you could find in the Bible. And that's exactly what the early church did. You see, that's been our plea. The restoration plea is, why stop at 500 years ago? Why not go back to AD 33? And so we're calling for the primitive paths. Of course, Jesus said, take my yoke upon you. There's a lot of work. Here, Jeremiah says to a nation that's under judgment, when you find those old paths, walk in them. And I'll leave you with that tonight. I told you it was going to be a simple sermon. I got one more point. Jesus says, learn of me. If we're going to make it at all, we've got to follow this to get through the path. You know, going up a hill ain't easy, is it? One thing I can tell you is when I used to coon hunt, I would try to find whatever path the cow had made for me. All right? And so when you come to a hill, you always don't look for a deer path, but look for wherever the cattle are going around the hill. Because a cow never goes straight up the hill. Are you aware of this? The cow will always meander around the thing like this. And I remember when I was a kid, I'd go coon hunting and I'd just barrel right up the hill. And the old timer would say, you can go that way if you want, but I'm going to follow this path. And he'd just walk up a little bit this way, and then this way, and then this way, and then this way. God never promised to take the mountains away. But what he did is he showed us the path to make it up them. And so that's what we're calling you to tonight. Pray for your country. We need it now. It's scary right now, but I believe God still rules in the nations of men. Won't you come as we stand and sing?